Zoom keeps changing us.
I know. Well, good morning, or good afternoon for some of you, I guess. I don't know. Morning for me here in Long Beach, California. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Melissa Tompkins Lewis, and I'm very excited to have my good friend Lucy Nash back on my webinar for April's webinar this month. For those of you who don't know me, I am the owner of South Coast Veterinary Management Solutions. I'm a full-time veterinary management consultant, and I help hospitals all over the country with different needs that they have. And I love being able to host these webinars and have different speakers talking about different topics that apply to us in veterinary medicine. I love being able to share this with everyone. After today's recording or after today's webinar, it will be uploaded to my YouTube channel sometime this weekend. So if you have to leave early, that's totally fine. It is recorded and uploaded. For those of you who obviously aren't watching it live, you're watching it on the recording, so you know that it's on my YouTube channel. And feel free to follow my YouTube channel at South Coast Veterinary Manage 263. Or you can type in South Coast Veterinary Management Solutions. It'll pop up as well. So I'm going to briefly introduce Lucy. So Lucy is a good friend of mine that I've known for several years. And she is a wonderful person. And I just could brag about her, but I won't embarrass her. So I will let her share about her story and how she is here today and what she's going to talk about.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. And yes, I'm very grateful for our friendship, not just because of getting to be able to share a lot of opportunities together, but yeah, one of the things I'm going to talk about today is sharing about education and as Melissa introduced. So I'm actually a registered veterinary technician, but I do not work in clinical practice anymore. I'm actually the community partnership manager for a company named Hound, which I'm more than happy to share information about. It is actually featured in this presentation. I will transparently say that. But this is something I do out of industry, but I'm very proud to be an RVT and sharing more about support staff education is kind of what we're going to talk about today, but also something I'm super passionate about because we lose so many technicians and support staff through various different means. And right now, I know vet med is going through a bit of a recruitment crisis, having a hard time finding different team members. We focus a lot on vets, but really want to look at other ways we can help retain and keep support staff. I'm in Southern California. Melissa and I met, oh gosh, I think I might have actually been a clinical practice RVT when you and I met. I'm just to share a little bit
No,
more
Just
fun
Food for
facts about.
Dogs. You were
Oh,
working for
right,
Just
there you
Food for
go. I was
Dogs.
worked for Just Food for Dogs then. But I'm also a huge board game Disney nerd, as you can tell probably from my background. I am a child in an adult body, but that makes it fun, so it's all good. I'm gonna share my screen here. Hopefully this works okay this time around. Just a quick check, is everybody seeing the screen okay? I know
I see
Melissa
it
and I checked it
perfectly.
earlier, but
Yep,
just
I
making
see it now.
sure. Perfect. Awesome. And then Melissa, as we talked about earlier, if anyone has questions, please interrupt me. Feel free to bug me all the way through. This is going to be very like informal and kind of just more love to hear experiences and share everyone else's feedback on how they're doing here. So what I wanted to talk to everybody about was why investing in team education pays off for everybody. And so we're kind of looking at, as I mentioned just a minute ago, we are seeing a bit of a recruiting crisis in vet med. I work, again, transparency here. I work for a company that handles recruiting and relief and helping teams with finding new hires and helping people in vet med find their perfect role. We see a lot of focus of this being on veterinarians, and of course, like for treatment of pets, veterinarians are a really big important part, but there is a support team behind them. As a technician, we do a lot of heavy focus of this on Vet Tech Week, but this is a year-round thing. And also, we can't forget the importance of other support staff in here, our assistants, our CSRs, our practice managers. I know most of you guys joining our practice managers here, like everybody has an important and vital role, and we are sometimes underutilizing them in ways that is causing us to have a loss in revenue in the clinic. So I guess I always start with an open question on this one of like, from everyone here, how many of you have lost a great team member in the last year? You know, they go, Melissa put her hand up already. Like we see this, and especially right now, it's just tough times. And so that's something we're going to think about. It's like everyone has had that experience where they've had a really great team member that they've lost and probably thought, how could I have retained that? And what I want to focus on today is like how education can lean into that and how education can also help with the revenue of your clinic. Oh, now my screen doesn't want to move along. There we go. Sorry about that. I'm going to have a few technical issues. Um, I already kind of really did an introduction to myself, but just like sharing this here. And again, also want to point out why this is such an important topic to me. As I mentioned at the beginning, I am an RVT. I actually worked in clinical practice for almost 10 years. And then, like so many stories we hear before, I became a burnout statistic. One of the things I always found really scary was when I was in tech school, I was told in tech school that the lifespan of an RVT in California was generally about 5 to 7 years. That's not something you want to hear at school. It's like, hey, you've started this career and you are going to be in it for 5 to 7 years, and then you're probably going to want to leave. Um, I, however, love this industry. It's also my second career, and so I was like, no, I want to make this work. I'm gonna beat that statistic. I didn't. I became a burnout statistic. I understand where all these problems came from. I've been in it firsthand. However, I found a way because I wanted to stay in this industry to kind of move into more of an industrial part of it and working, as Melissa mentioned, I worked for Just Food for Dogs for a little while. I now work for Hound. And something I want to do is kind of help with technicians and support staff being able to see those other ways. But the big thing is finding them in clinics and finding ways that how do we expand that 5 to 7 years? So staff shortages and burnout and turnover rates are not something new. These were things that have been going on 10 years ago, maybe on a smaller scale. They are expediting here, but this is something that's not new. And I'm sure many of you are noticing in your clinics, like the technicians, assistants, receptionists, practice managers, you guys are being asked to do more and more than ever, especially as we are having more, like these teams are getting smaller, there's cuts everywhere. Everyone's being asked to do more and more and more. But the big question is, what are we doing to support the team members doing more and more and more? Are we actually giving them the tools they need and the education they need to be able to continue to do those things more? Or are we just burning them out? So, what is the cost of doing nothing right now? So, there's turnover and productivity costs in this. There's the cost of recruiting. So I just kind of want to talk about like what happens if we leave things as they are, status quo. And as I mentioned, we want to talk about like how education and utilization impacts revenue in the clinic. Because at the end of the day, we're all looking at that bottom line and making sure our clinics are making money and being successful so that we can provide the best care for our pets and our clients. So again, full transparency here. I do work for a recruiting company, so I kind of have a little bit of an idea of how much these cost. But if we're only utilizing one recruiting platform a year, the cost of recruiting can be anywhere from $4,000 to $5,000 per year. Now, let's be realistic here. No one's using just one recruiting platform. We are casting the net as wide as we can get it. So I've mentioned three here, like LinkedIn and Indeed, Glassdoor, Hound. Most of the time you're posting your jobs on as many of these platforms as you can. So that cost can easily be like 2 or 3 times the $4,000 to $5,000 per year. And you probably think, well, I'm only posting for a job for like one technician. I'm not using it for a whole year. But actually, we're seeing now that the average time of recruiting for a position is anywhere from 6 to 13 months, even for support staff. If we're looking at DVMs, it's anywhere from 12 to 18 months. But for support staff, it's actually now 6 to 13 months that we're spending. So you are spending that money per year. And if you are spending $4,000 to $5,000 per technician, per assistant, per CSR, those costs really start to add up. Overall, the estimate is the cost of replacing a single employee can easily range from 50 to 200% of their annual salary. And that's including not just the cost of the recruiting platforms, but that's going to be the cost of the time for the people interviewing them, the time for training for that new team member, the time for onboarding, all of those things. But the other cost we don't factor into this is the cost of the like clinic and institutional knowledge that walks out the door with that member of staff. You're having to train a whole new person from scratch. So there's that. If you've ever been to any of my previous webinars, or actually rewatched the one I did with Melissa last year, one thing we talked about in that was how even the team members are there. A study from, I believe it was AVMA, I can't remember if it was AVMA or Gallup on this, showed that 30% of team members are already mentally planning to leave the job. So they're already in that mindset. And so if they're not there, they're disengaged. We want to have an engaged team here. So you're already facing those revenue losses before the team member has even left. I've lost the page, sorry. And a quick, again, won't go too deep into this. Everybody has seen these numbers. Hopefully, you've all read the AHA Stay Please like papers, either the first one or the second one or both. But looking at the yearly average veterinary staff turnover rates. So you can see here, I did it for all staff just because I think it's entirely relevant here that the numbers are. But generally, technicians about 23% turnover rate per year in clinics. Receptionists are 32%. That's insane. Our receptionists are the first face that every client that comes in sees, every client meets, every client speaks to on the phone, and we have a turnover rate of 32% on them. That's crazy. All other support staff, the study does kind of bunch them all in together, is also 32%. These are really kind of scary numbers. One thing that came out of this as well was that those staff that were leaving were kind of asked, the ones that completed in surveys and things like that, were asked a few questions about why they were thinking about leaving. Only 34% of those that left felt that their practice actually invested in their growth. So these are not just like HR statistics here. They actually represent real people, real disruption, and real dollars that are walking out of your clinic. Team members come in and they don't see a future in your practice, then they'll go try and find one somewhere else. They'll stay while they can. There's a mentality, I think, sometimes that people are working for a paycheck, and that is true. We all need paychecks. We all need to live. But you can keep team members if they feel like they're invested in a team. So I'm going to talk more, most of this presentation is going to be about talking about education, but let's also highlight on utilization for a moment here, because a utilized team is going to be an engaged team. So what are the costs again if we do nothing, if we don't invest in education, if we don't utilize our teams, if we don't work as a team for the clinic? Well, the two biggest ones here are going to be a loss of revenue, which is going to be impactful on everybody, and also staff frustration. And I think staff frustration very much feeds into a loss of revenue as well, because staff frustration leads to burnout, leads to compassion fatigue, leads to those team members leaving. According to AHA's 2023 tech utilization guidelines, and again, this statistic and everything is focusing mainly on technicians, but I'm sure if we expanded this out to the broader support staff, these numbers are either going to be very scarily higher or at least roughly the same. Underutilizing credentialed veterinary technicians costs the average practice $93,000 to $170,000 per year in lost productivity. Just let that sink in for a second.
Did you say 973,000?
So no, between 93 and 170,000.
Okay. Well, either way.
Yeah. Either way, still a lot of money.
It's pretty high for loss of utilization, because that means the doctors are doing everything, which means the doctors are losing their own revenue that they could be producing if they were letting in technicians. Yeah, it's a balance, right?
Right. It's absolutely a balance. So that's where that revenue calculation comes in exactly that, Melissa, right? It's not just we need to recruit and find, these are costs that are hidden that we don't see, and they don't come out on the balance sheets and the P&Ls and things like that, because you don't think about the fact that doctor is now seeing an appointment that a technician could see. That technician maybe is doing or handling something that a skilled assistant can do. Maybe you've got your assistants answering the phone on reception because you're short receptionists, when they really could be being utilized in helping the technicians with appointments in the back. All these things scale, meaning you're seeing less appointments and or doing less things per appointment, seeing less surgeries, seeing less profitable things coming through the clinic because you've got that lost productivity. And I want to talk about staff frustration here again, because coming from those tech utilization guidelines, 87% of vet techs said they were regularly performing tasks below their skill level. And for everyone in hospitals here, and I'm going to say, hey, I've done this. I'm going to caveat this at the beginning with, we should all be pitching in work. Clinic is a team. Everybody should be helping out. However, how often are we asking our vets to clean a kennel versus asking our technicians to clean a kennel? Sure, vets are going in and out of an appointment, but It's also not the technician's job necessarily to be going in and cleaning kennels, mopping floors. Sure, should they be pitching in? Absolutely. But that is not part of what they are. We didn't go to school to do that. We went to school to use our skills and to actually be assistants to the doctors and help them with those things. So it just becomes not just a morale problem there, because again, you've got this highly skilled, educated technician who's now mopping floors and cleaning kennels, but that becomes lost revenue because that technician could be seeing a patient, they could be helping with a vaccine, they could be fulfilling a treatment plan while the doctor's in with the next patient. They could be doing client education while the doctor's in with the next patient. It really does just become a big revenue problem as well as morale. And those things so tightly link in that we just don't realize, because again, these are things that are not necessarily appearing on our profit and loss sheets every month. So the other thing as well is actually looking at what staff actually need to stay retained and utilized, going to be utilized. So it really isn't just about pay. I know a lot of people think that people do jump from job to job because they want to get that extra couple of dollars here and there. And I'm not going to say that pay is not important. Of course it is. But so many survey after survey done by AHA, done by NAVDA, done by CARFDA, done by all these different places, all show that support staff want to feel valued, have opportunities to grow, and be recognized for their expertise. They want that pay, but they also want to be able to work for that pay. So they want to be challenged and developed, not just utilized. Utilization is like the base level, but then they also want to be developed, show opportunities for growth, have career advancement. When we give our teams clear pathways of how they can learn, advance, and potentially increase that pay, we're going to be speaking directly to what keeps them engaged and committed. So being able to have opportunities for growth, whether that's within the team, like that doesn't necessarily mean you need to make every single person the team lead or the team manager or things like that, but just find out how they want to grow. And then recognize and appreciate when they do things like that. If you have someone who handled a difficult surgery, if you have someone that trained and mentored someone else very well, give them opportunities to develop their skills. You may have someone who is an absolutely amazing person in your surgery, so you always put them in surgery, but you have someone who wants to learn. Help them mentor each other. Lots of things like that. We really want to help people continue to learn, continue to train, and again, feel supported, valued, and given opportunities to grow. So this is where I want to go into where education fits into all of that. So honestly, access to education is not only the easiest way for us to retain teams and to help improve that revenue line within teams and utilization, it's also one of the strongest predictors of staff retention. It's really, honestly, the easiest thing we can do. Like, obviously, there's lots of other things like benefits. And again, we talk about pay and growth opportunities, but education is hands down the easiest predictor of this. When people feel like they're growing, they stay. When people feel like they're being utilized, when they're being part of the team, they absolutely stay where they are. Melissa and I are part of a group called Vet Partners, and I'm going to mention here some of the data that they have pulled before, because they have a really awesome team utilization guide, and I do have a QR code for that later in a later slide. But some of the data there shows support staff who received ongoing education are 3 times more likely to remain in a practice for 3 or more years. 3 times more likely.
I can add to that, Lucy, because
yeah, absolutely. Please do.
My practice owner, she knew she couldn't teach me how to be a manager after I was promoted. So she started sending me to CE, like she sent me to AHA, she sent me to AHA's management school that they had and like other things. And then of course, she actually encouraged me to become a CVPM. So like I stayed there for 12 and a half years and I was not making, actually, full transparency, I was making less than most of my colleagues in our local area. And I had worked at my hospital longer than them, but it was because of all the things that she did for me. And I was allowed, all the CE, all the things like that she encouraged me to do. That made a huge difference. Really did. Made a huge difference of why I stayed as long as I did. And it was a good practice, but just, it was definitely something that was important.
Absolutely. And again, like continuing education, it's really not just a perk. A lot of people use it as like when they're putting their job advertisements up, they say they have like, you have a CE allowance, a CE budget, and they list it as like a perk, with the benefit, perk or benefit. But honestly, it's not really just a perk. It is a strategy of retention. getting certifications, continuing education, building skill programs within the clinic. It doesn't necessarily always have to be external. You can do internal things too. The biggest thing that does is create a clear message to your team that you are invested in their future in the clinic, or at least you're invested in their future in the industry. You want to keep them there. You want to keep, having a higher quality of care, a higher quality of standard within your practice. It's often seen that practices that build structured education pathways report higher morale, lower turnover, and a stronger team cohesion within their team. And that's from every level, not just the doctors, but all the way from support staff, like even kennel attendants that are given clear pathway of like, hey, you've joined, as a kennel attendant because you want to learn more about the industry, you want to be in vet med. Where's your future? Like, is your future that you would like to become an RVT? Cool. Let's help you map out that pathway to get there. The hope is that always they would stay there and do it within your clinic and show that because you're showing you're invested. Of course, I'm not going to say here that people will always stay within the same clinic, but showing your team that you're invested in their pathway to growth is going to be a huge thing for them. They're going to see that you are there. And it's also going to reflect a lot on the other staff. Like if they see that you are helping train that new person that came in to help them get the steps they want to be, maybe support them becoming an RVT, support them becoming a practice manager, as Melissa used as a great example there for herself. Like you have a practice manager who's going to help with promoting other people to help you become a practice manager. Now, in a practice manager situation, no hospital is always going to have two practice managers. So sure, there's a level there that you're investing in them to then go somewhere else and be somewhere else. But that then bleeds out into, well, Melissa's going to now go, like, I'm going to use you as an example here, but you had that investment and that like loyalty to that team then. And so when you go off and be a practice manager somewhere else, if someone reaches out to you and says, hey, I'm looking for a new job, any clinics in the local area you recommend, your first go-to is going to be that one that invested in you. You're going to tell people about that clinic. Be like, hey, look, I went there. Maybe it's a little bit out of your like travel zone or whatever, but they're really invested in educating you and helping you get the goals that you need. You're going to always refer. One thing I tell employers all the time as part of my role with Hound is your biggest asset for recruiting is your current team. If your team love work, sorry, Melissa, you can say something.
No, I was gonna say very true.
Yeah. So if your team like working with you, they're going to tell their friends in the industry how much they love their job. And when their friends in the industry are looking for a new job, where are they going to turn? They're going to go, hey, oh, my friend Lucy works at this clinic and they're hiring and she loves it there. Maybe I should just put in an application there. Like I'm looking for this new job and she loves it there. Why would I not work somewhere that's going to make me happy?
And when you were talking about the education and things, Sarah had a question. If you know of a good website or resource to look at a lot of the conferences that are offered in a year, like if there's one source, I don't know of one, but I don't know if you do.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I don't think there is one like giant like one website that conglomerates all of them together, which actually now my brain is like, can I create that? Can I make that resource? I could probably do that.
I have
My
a
brain is like, that would
spreadsheet that
be,
has a lot of conferences, but
yeah,
for me as a speaker, not necessarily like what 10
right,
or
right.
10.
So,
I don't know.
and I have some information on a later slide with some resources for places you can reach out to that like will have very dedicated CSR see like where you can reach out to for technician, assistant, like lots of different like practice manager education. But I don't think there is a general place that says all of them. Honestly, what I normally do when I'm looking for CE is this is going to be real basic. I Google like I'm in Southern California veterinary technician continuing education events, and then see what populates. I don't know for every single state. I'm sorry, I don't have the encyclopedic knowledge of it, but like I'm in Southern California, and I know this exists for those of you that are in Northern California. The Southern California Veterinary Medical Association has a website. You can join as a member, and they do a ton of online CE and in-person CE. They have chapters. Shout out here, I am the Orange County chapter secretary, and we have a meeting tonight. So we do like an in-person meeting once a month, which is different educational events. If you are a member, they are free. You just have to pay the membership. And I know for support staff, it's like $45 a year. It's really not that expensive. I pricing off the top of my head is not where I'm at right now. But there's those things. I'm sure, honestly, I would say that the first step would be look at your local VMA association, and see if they offer CE and start from there. There is sorry, I'm going off at a tangent of all the CE places I know now. VMX also has Hive, which is practice manager and technician events, and they do 4 a year. They do one East Coast, one, they're north, south, east, and west, basically. They're about to have one in San Antonio in May. Then they have one in Charlotte in September, I think. They have one on the West Coast, which is normally in Anaheim, in like October. And then they do their other one in Chicago earlier in the year. So they like try and rotate through. There's Weston, which is now doing the second one, Viticus in Nashville. There's so many. But yeah, I guess the short answer to the original question is I don't think there's a site that consolidates all of them down. But honestly, the way I do it is normally just Google, which is very basic, but sometimes Google is your friend. And sometimes Google tells you lies, but sometimes Google is your friend. Were there any other questions, Melissa, while we're here? I just figured I'd.
No, I posted a link to the AHA Stay Please, so everybody could just
Great.
copy and paste that if they wanted to.
Yep.
And then I shared about a hospital I know that sent all their team to the BBC.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome. Yeah.
yeah, I think they have
I know a few like that just yeah, actually, I'll use this as a great example of education and retention. So, a friend of mine owns a private practice. His clinic's been open maybe 2 years. His clinic every year during Western Veterinary Conference in Vegas shuts down for the week. Because he takes the entire team to Western. Like he's like, hey, you guys, and not just the technicians and doctors who need CE. He takes everybody. Like he pays for the hotel. And again, like of course, this is all something that you have to have within your budget, but he specifically makes sure every year he budgets for this. But he takes that entire team, pays for the hotel, pays for the travel, and pays for the conference badges, and takes them all to Western Veterinary Conference so they can get CE. So the hospital fully investing in education there of like just making sure they can go and pick whatever CE they want to do. Obviously, would like to send them off into doing things that they are practicing in the clinic, but he doesn't like caveat like if they want to go do a thing on exotics because that's what they're interested in, they can go while they're there, and he goes and gets that set up. That clinic's been open for a year. The team that started on opening day are all still there 2 years later. They have not had a single person quit the team.
Amazing.
They've actually hired more because they started to get busier. So just showing where that just small thing of like, okay, sure, you don't get the maybe downside to this is you don't get the flexibility of what continuing education event you go to, but I'm going to invest in you to go to this one. And that's a huge thing there.
I took your advice and Googled it really quickly. There's a company that put together a complete guide.
Yay! That's awesome. I did not know that. So there you go.
And
will you put it in chat so I can see it too?
I did. I put it in the chat. And also it shows SCVMA 2026 Spring Conference, which I think is the one that you're speaking at in like a week or so. So I thought that
I'm not doing the spring conference, sadly. I'm doing their local VMA meeting. But the spring conference is awesome, and you should go if you're in that area.
But I thought that was kind of cool. So it's got like all these different states. So yeah, Sarah, check that one out because it just kind of glanced at it. It seems like it's got a lot on there.
There you go. Google's your friend sometimes. Alrighty. So where was I? And so yeah, the education and utilization. So where that locks from. So being able to get more out of your team. So again, some of the statistics I'm going to use here are because they're from AHA's technician utilization guide. They are going to be very focused on technicians, but we can apply this throughout all support staff here. So there are many ways that just having an educated team really does enhance efficiency, leading to better workflows, better patient care, and better client care. Because again, a couple of things I want to unpack there with this part is when clients see consistent team members, that is also going to help them build loyalty. We always worry when a doctor leaves the practice that that the clients are going to leave and follow that doctor. You know, but if we invest in the whole team and and they are used to seeing everybody, they always get to see the same tech, they always get to see the same faces at reception. That builds loyalty to the practice, not only the doctor. And so, yeah, sure, of course, we're never going to have zero turnover. People retire, people move, people just naturally phase out of certain jobs. That's going to happen. But what we don't want is to have to worry every time that person leaves that that's going to lose client loyalty. There's also going to be better patient care here. Again, I've done a whole presentation on how this all links together with better patient care and better client care. But if that team, like those techs and assistants, are consistently seeing that pet every time they come in for their annuals or for their exams, or maybe they've got a kidney, a renal patient. I almost said kidney, and I was like, no, renal patient makes more sense. A renal patient, they're going to know what's normal for that patient and what isn't. And if they come in and they see something odd, they're going to flag it to you that maybe the owner didn't see, maybe the doctor didn't see because they're trying to go through there.
I have a funny story really quickly. So
Go
one of my
ahead.
friends was boarding and they had a dog come in from, they didn't board at their hospital, they boarded somewhere else. And then the owner brought the dog in and said, he's kind of off. And one of the technicians at my friend Leslie's hospital said, that's not Johnny or whatever the dog's name was. So they had taken their dog to it was maybe a different boarder or a different groomer or something. And they had gotten another dog back. And the owners
Yep.
didn't do that for like 2 days. The cat was being weird. The cat was freaking out because obviously the
Cat
cat
knows. Cats
dog.
always know.
And it was the technician at that hospital that caught that it was not the right dog for that owner. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was,
And so that's an extreme
yeah,
example
that's
of that, right?
extreme.
But it does happen. But it can also be like little lumps, like, oh, when maybe maybe you do bathing at your clinic and the kennel attendant or the assistant who's helping with the bath notices a bump or a lump that wasn't there before or has significantly grown. Like these cases lead to better patient care because you're catching things there that maybe because the owner's petting the dog every day, they don't notice it, but someone who sees them like every couple of months will notice a difference there. um but one of the things, again, from AHA's veterinary technician utilization guidelines is that seeing that practices that fully utilize their team see a 20 to 30% gain in efficiency. So things are just getting done quicker because the teams know the protocols, they know the SOPs, they are limiting less, like there's less margin of error for things on there. And again, errors are never going to be completely at zero, but if we can decrease that margin of error, that's going to be a great thing. Faster appointments, because again, you're building that loyalty with the client. They're happier to talk to like the technician and support team. They don't need everything to be answered by the doctor because they've built that trust with the rest of the team as well. It means the doctors can spend time doing doctor things, not necessarily having to be the ones that are administering the vaccines, drawing blood, checking everything. You can have a dental running, if you have a cohat, a technician can be running that cohat while the doctor's there, but maybe the doctor's writing up the notes for the records and things like that, and just doing the parts that they need to be involved in. But this only works when the staff are educated and empowered to operate at the top of their scope of education. So without utilization and education really do go hand in hand, because I appreciate the teams don't want to necessarily fully utilize someone they're not sure are educated to do so. So helping improve that education helps with then being able to allow that trust in there for utilization, and again, improving on better revenues there. So where is that revenue connection? And this is where I linked in the Vet Partners Utilization Guide. I highly recommend, if you have never read this, it's a great document. I'm slightly biased. I'm part of Vet Partners. I was not involved in writing this in any way. I just like to promote it. But it's the Vet Team Utilization Guide. It has some really great insight and information from some wonderful people in the industry, Melissa being one of them in here, for things like this. But honestly, let's just talk about the bottom line. Let's talk about the dollars here. The data shows here that practices with high team member utilization report 18 to 22% higher revenue per full-time member of staff. I mean, if you think about how much your clinic is making from their appointment value and you want to add 18 to 22% just from doing small things like utilization, educating your team, that is not a small margin. That is a significant competitive advantage. So when your whole team is educated, confident, and working at their full potential, bottom line is your practice earns more. It's a really straightforward, and really straightforward line there. Sorry, my brain just stopped for a second there. It happens. So what is the real impact of education on your ROI, right? ROI of education is hard to track. These are some things, again, that do not turn up on your P&L, do not have very easy ways to like say, hey, I spent this much money on educating my team, so therefore because of it, I am seeing X amount of value. It's really hard. And again, I think sometimes why it gets underutilized because it really shows up in a ways that you don't immediately expect. But ways you want to look at it is think about compliance rates. When a well-trained assistant explains the value of a dental cleaning or a wellness panel, again, two things have happened there. That client may be more likely to do that because they have learned from someone who's educated and they've explained it very well, why that procedure, why that thing is being presented to them. But also, if you have a well-educated assistant or technician doing that, the doctor can be doing something else and working with and chatting with another patient. Also, more educated team members coming in and doing that and explaining it well because they have the time to do so, more clients are going to say yes to these things. Think about the reduced rework costs of staff getting things right the first time because they know the standard procedures, they know how how things work with step by step with certain lab work, certain codes that need to go into the computer, all of those kind of things. One I don't like to hugely focus on, but honestly, it's something we do have to consider. You have to consider the what we call like upsell opportunities. Like, are you going to try and get them to get their medication with you rather than going to an external pharmacy and things like that? Because because that technician, that assistant, whoever's gone into the room with them can kind of talk a little bit more about why it's important to get that started right away versus, the benefits and pros and cons of certain medications and things like that. Even things like flea treatment. Again, not one I like to hugely focus on, but it is something to consider in there. Repeatedly, because of things like this, education pays for itself over and over again because, again, as we're talking about those 18 to 22%, that easily covers and more so the cost of that you're spending on the education. And also, like I've mentioned it 1,000 times, I forgot I put a slide on it, but education impacts client loyalty. As I mentioned, when you work, often clinics worry that if a vet leaves, the clients are going to go with that vet because they've built the loyalty to that vet. However, if you can have that client build loyalty to the team and not the vet, then that's something you don't necessarily have to worry about. Again, they feel more comfortable talking to the technician about the problem that's going on. So it doesn't always have to be a vet calling them back. It can sometimes be the technician they know. I'm going to use myself as an example here. The very first clinic I worked at, I was an assistant and I worked there still while I was going to school, become a technician. I was there on and off for about 7 years. So there were some clients that I met them when their dogs were puppies and knew them through their entire lifespan, or at least till like middle age for the smaller dogs. But because they continually saw my face coming in, especially when I became an RVT and I had that education, they would often be okay talking to me about the procedures or what was going on with their dog and not necessarily having to spend the whole half an hour appointment with the vet. The vet would go in, do the initial exam and talk to them. But then when it came to explaining the procedures or explaining things, they were very comfortable talking to me about it because they'd see me consistently over time. And so they built loyalty with that. When I did finally leave, it was really funny. I had a few of them reach out to me and find out where I was going. And actually, some of them became clients at Just Food for Dogs because of where I ended up going. Melissa, you going to say something there?
No, I lost you for a second. I didn't know if it was just my
Oh,
computer, but you're back.
okay, perfect. So yeah, so having education and having a knowledgeable team and a clearly utilized team with that knowledge fosters trust with those clients. And again, if they see that their dog is happy to see you every time, like no dog or cat, let's ignore cats. So cats hate going to the vet, full stop. The techs that work with my cats always tell me that they're always really sweet in the back, and I'm like, I know my cats are not, but it's really nice that you're telling me that. But you have the dogs, coming in, if they are not super scared when they see that one, because they're always seeing the same technician every time, and that technician knows what their favorite treat is, what their, that they don't like being scratched behind the ears, or you have to approach them slowly, or even small little details like that, or they just don't, they don't like men, they don't like certain smells or things like that. Like those things build that loyalty because you're being there. And also, those team members come across as confident, and that's always something that builds trust with them. Now, this is where I promised I would mention some stuff like this. So again, now Melissa put the link in the chat for where you can utilize and see like a full list of all the conferences. But I mentioned it's educating beyond technicians. It's really easy to focus on veterinary technicians, especially because in many states we require continuing education credits to renew our licenses every year. Again, could get on a whole nother soap nationwide, but I'm going to not do here talking about that. But it's very easy to focus on technicians, but we should focus on the entire team. There's data pulled from every state that it's, we see the investment from our assistants, our CSRs, our practice managers. We lost Melissa. Anyone else lose Melissa?
No, I just went off screen. My internet.
Okay, perfect. That's okay. I thought I lost you then. But there's lots of other leadership and resources out there to be able to connect and help with educating your additional team members. A lot of the times, assistants and kennel attendants, those kind of roles, technician education is always useful for them as well. But maybe you have your veterinary receptionist, your practice manager. So I've shown here VHMA. I know many of you are probably members or have heard of this before for practice managers. They do amazing continuing education resources for practice managers, getting certifications and all things like that. Then we have the newly established North America Association of Veterinary Receptionists, again, who offer great education on things like client communication, leadership, business skills, animal handling, animal welfare, all those kind of things. And they do it very specifically for veterinary receptionists. So again, not just focusing on the skills that we think about in vet med, like medical and learning about different disease processes and things like that, but actually looking at these other, I hate again the term soft skills, but these soft skills that people can use for using for client communication and actually investing in all these kind of additional things to help with those clinics. I'm finding out, I will add here, I didn't put it on a slide, but the biggest thing that you can do is also find out how your team want to grow, what they're interested in, and how you can then help them get CE towards that. Maybe you have a office manager, a CSR who doesn't want to become an office manager or something like that, but would love to transition into the back, into working as a technician or as an assistant. So are there ways that you can help them gain the skills, maybe have one of the assistants or technicians mentor them for maybe half a shift where you can spare it here and there to kind of help educate them. But VHMA, NAAVR, there's also NAFTA for technicians, and a lot of states have their own technician organizations, like a local state one. I know CARFTA is the one for California, and there's lots of different ones there as well. So great team education doesn't have to be complicated or expensive. And I know sometimes it's like, okay, well, we have to slap a CE budget into things. And honestly, continuing education reimbursements, in my opinion, can and should be built into compensation packages. It should be a no-brainer that you, as part of the compensation package, you do have some kind of buffer in there for continuing education. But if we're not just looking at the specific dollar value there's other ways you can do that. It can look like getting companies in to do continuing education lunch and learns. I know a lot of lunch and learns are not always CE rates approved and things like that, but they're still education. And the companies don't mind doing it, and sometimes you get free lunch out of it. It's great. Cross-training between departments. Again, it's really great when receptionists know what the procedures are and how things work in the back, because they can help explain that better to the clients. Mentorship pairing. Do your assistants want to become technicians? Cool. Is there technicians that are happy to teach them things and skills that are within the scope of their licenses? Also, online access platforms. So many places, and I'm going to shout out Hound here because it's something I do, and Melissa obviously does this really great every month as well. But like, so many platforms offer free race approved CE for varying topics. And so you can always look up what's online. Again, please check out Hound because they do a lot of well, but there's also Vetfolio. There's I can't think of any others off the IDEX and Tech, and those do a lot of them as well.
Vet Girl does those.
VetGirl, thank you. VetGirl does also a ton of them there. So there's a lot of access to online platforms too. And then also remembering recognition. So um, when staff earn certifications, recognize it, do something for them, be great. Like, even if it's just like, hey, this person got their certification in this, like, let's get lunch for everybody in the team. Like, just, or even if it's just acknowledging it to the team, or even if they're a shy person, acknowledging it to them that you noted. Maybe you have a file in the office that keeps everyone's certifications. And so you can kind of do that. It just has to be small, consistent investments, because those small investments compound over time. So hopefully you've now all realized that education can be a great resource, a great revenue case, things like this. Oftentimes the biggest stumbling block on all of this is making the case to leadership that this is something that needs to be invested. And it's a real conversation here. It's really something that team investment and investing in it is essential for long-term success of your client. You want to frame it as not just an ROI, again, because as I mentioned earlier, it's really hard to track. Like, we spent X amount on education and we received X back in revenue. You actually want to, sorry, you do want to do it as an ROI, not as a clinical expense. So not just in and out money, it's going through there. And the biggest thing I always say to remember here is, remember, you're not just investing in the people, you're investing in the stability and growth of the practice. So while it looks like you are just investing in, like, oh, we're giving this extra person $500. Yeah, of course, short term, absolutely, that's what you're doing. But in the long term, you're investing in that person staying, keeping the practice and client loyalty and consistent, and then growing that with the business and being able to get more revenue in and more practice. And again, to kind of go lead over some of the numbers we went over earlier, turnover costs can be anywhere from 50 to 200% of a salary to replace. Underutilization costs anywhere from $93 to $170,000 per year. And CEE reimbursements helps to fill roles 40% faster. Some numbers there, which I can happily share the where those data pull from as well. So also coming with that leadership conversation is, how do we overcome the barriers to education? The biggest two we always hear is, we don't have the budget and we don't have the time. So let's address the first one here. And I know we're coming up on time here, so I'll be real quick on these last few slides here. But let's handle that first one first. We don't have the budget. Again, we talked about it in a few slides ago, where it doesn't have to be huge, like grandiose gestures. Like I mentioned, the clinic that pays for everyone to go to Western every year. That's great. If that's not something you guys can invest in, that's okay. There are other things you can do. Again, it can be small amounts. Maybe just, I'm going to use an example of SCVMA in Southern California here. For a technician or an assistant, the membership to that is $45 a year. And they offer hundreds of hours of online and in-person continuing education for $45 a year. You can find things like that to invest in, where you spend maybe less than $100, but you're still promoting, giving that budget to them to be able to do that. So a small amount per year can really yield measurable retention and also revenue on there as well. Then the other big one, which I think is one that people don't focus on enough, is we don't have the time. You can't afford to have that team member go off for a couple of days to go to a big conference, because then you have to fill their shifts and it's just someone that's unknown. And yeah, you talked about client loyalty, Lucy. What do you mean now I'm going to send someone off for 3 days and not have them in the team? Online and on-demand CE removes scheduling barriers, doing things in the clinic. Have, like I mentioned earlier, you can have things like lunch and learn, in clinic mentorship, things like that. You can build those into those time barriers, but also at the end of the day, you do just have to buffer time for these kind of things to let the team be educated. Because also linked into that, another one we hear a lot is, we can't cover the shifts. Well, cross training, staggered scheduling, every barrier that comes up kind of has a workaround to it. Like, if you don't send the entire team to one conference, maybe send one tech to one so that the other tech can cover while they're gone, and then you send the other tech to a different one. All those kinds of things can be done here. And then making sure your clinic is built on an education first culture, making sure that you build education into onboarding, making sure CE conversations are part of every annual review. Look at what they want to do, like the team members, what they've established in the previous year, or biannual review. Hopefully you're doing more than just one review a year, but whenever you have reviews with that team member, build CE and mentorship and learning into those conversations. Create recognition systems for certifications and milestones. And also a big thing for you guys who are on the call, because you are the leaders of your team, let leadership be a model for pursuing development. So be seen to be doing these things too. Go to CE, bring back information that you've learned from those kind of things. Lead by example here. Providing incentives for growth as well. So create policies and build them into your practice, and then create incentives to grow. And again, having that very education first culture is going to not only be a good retention asset, it's also going to be a great recruitment asset. And then the ripple effect of that, I'll go through very quickly, is like we've kind of talked about this multiple times already. Retention and revenue, it's all about the animals really, and the pets and the clients that we're seeing. Having an educated team is going to build better client compliancy, better client experience, better patient experience. You're going to prioritize education to see lower turnover. You can help fill positions faster when you do have them, any team members leave for various reasons. But your team are going to be confident and comfortable with procedures, and they just are going to be staying around longer. Some tools and resources, again, I know I've kind of did one of these already, but some others to kind of help with, along with those ones that I already mentioned. AHA is another great resource for client education for online and skills and things. I mentioned NAVTA here for technicians and assistants, contacting local VMAs and put CVMA in here. You can tell my brain is in California sometimes, but VMAs and vet tech associations. Contact other practice managers. I don't know if any of you are part of practice manager groups, but if you are, you can always talk to each other about where do your techs and where do your assistants and CSRs get their continuing education and resources for things like that. You can always reach out to me. I've got my contact details on a follow-up slide in a moment. I'm sure Melissa has some great resources as well. But very quickly, my last 6 key, I always like to say, like, here's my big key takeaways from everything we talked about, because it was a lot. So turnover is expensive, but education and utilization is the antidote to that. Is it going to solve all turnover? Absolutely not, but it is going to help reduce those expenses. Utilization of your team is actually underutilization of your team is actually costing your clinic real money. You don't see it on the line-to-line items, but there are things where the doctors are doing things where they could be seeing other patients. You've got underutilized technicians, underutilized receptionists. They're not talking about the procedures and urgency and things like that, and just building up those client resources. It really is costing your practice real money. This is one I think is the most important. Staff stay where they grow. Again, people will move for a paycheck, but people will stay if they feel like they're learning and being developed and have growth potential within their clinic. Education impacts your bottom line through retention, revenue, and client loyalty. So again, creating that confident, educated team, they feel like they're learning and growing, they stay. It impacts your revenue and your client loyalty by having them be able to perform tasks and work with clients in various different ways, so people can be doing different things and increasing your revenue. Every role and every person deserves to be invested in all year long. We do a lot for Vet Techs and Vet Tech Week, but education and investment and utilization is a year-long process. So it's great when we offer it for 1 month a year, and then we have our veterinary receptionist week, and we have our veterinary assistant week, but it is really something we need to be investing in all through the year. And you don't need a huge budget for this. Again, in a lot of cases, you can do something small for $100 a year. You just need the intention and just your teams to be seeing that you are invested in them for those reasons. All right, I talked a lot. Thank you for listening. I know I also talk very quickly, so hopefully if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to me anytime. I put my contact information here. And also I had to include, this is Max. He was an overweight kitty. And one of my favorite experiences from working in veterinary medicine was putting a cat in an underwater treadmill and living to tell the tale. So I always like to share a picture of Max here, because he does not look impressed. And I am looking like I'm happy to be alive. So here, but I put my social direct information in here. So you can, I realized I didn't put my email on here, but I'll share that in the chat in a second. But you can find me on Instagram or LinkedIn. I do have a Substack page where I'm going to start posting some of this stuff into like blog format. I'm going to be honest, I have not posted anything yet. But I put it on here because if you'd like to follow me for when I do, you can add that in here. And then, as I mentioned, I do work for a recruiting company. So if you ever have questions about anything on the recruiting side, I put Hound's information in here as well, which was got my Hound work email on here. So you can reach out anytime. And as we are on a topic of a conversation of education, houndperks.com is a website that's going to be launching in about a week where all of Hound's free continuing education is going to be housed, where you can see live upcoming webinars and also on demand CE. So please check it out because I couldn't resist the plug for that as it's a new project I'm working on as we were talking about education.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lucy. I appreciate that. One thing that I thought of, and I've actually said this to many practice owners over the years, when you were talking about training education, how sometimes it's not valued in some of the team members, is I asked them, could you do a spay on the first day of vet school? How long did it take you to learn your skills as a doctor? And so even though some of the skills that team members are learning are not the same, there's still something that take time and you have to invest in their training and that continuing education to get them up to that level. So and it's funny when I say that to doctors, they think about it. It kind of makes sense to them. Whether they do anything with it, I don't know, but I've said that many times. So
Yeah.
that if they're resistant to helping your team grow, sit down and have that conversation with them. Like how much time did it take them?
Yeah.
So
And also like there's a level I think I've had that conversation with someone as well of when they're not sure about trusting a team member to do something. Like I've had doctors who are like, well, I don't trust that tech. Like, we use an example of a technician, like as a person saying, well, this person could go do that, so you can go do something else. And they're like, well, I don't trust that technician to do it. You say, why? Why don't you? What is preventing you from trusting them to go do that? And they're like, well, I'd rather, I'm going to use just throw yours and my name in here, but like doctor's like, well, I don't trust Lucy to go do it yet because I don't know her that well, but I trust Melissa. And Melissa's not free right now. And it's like, okay, well, what built you to trust Melissa to do it? And it's like 9 times out of 10, the conversation is time. Time took it. And it's like, well, you're never going to trust Lucy to do it if you don't let Lucy go do it. Because what's going to happen is you're going to send Lucy to go do it. She's going to do it. It's going to be fine. Actually, it may be better than fine. She might discover something else or something might happen. And that's how you build that trust. It's like, but if you don't start the process, someone has to start the process. So maybe be the bigger person that starts the process.
exactly.
Stop sharing here.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any other questions. Thank you for sharing your email. Sarah says thank you. If there's any questions people want to ask before we head out, feel free to throw it in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask her directly. And if not, that is okay too.
Oh yeah, that's totally fine. I never have questions. It's always a lot of information all in one go. So
all right, wonderful. Well, thank everyone for coming today. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Lucy, for doing this webinar with us. Really appreciate that. I'll get it uploaded in the next few days. And then one question I did want to ask, are you able to share your PDF of your slides with me so I can send it to those who registered? Okay, perfect.
absolutely. And one I didn't share on the slides, but the very final slide I have is a resources page where as we pulled a lot of data and a lot of numbers from various different guides and things like that. I'm sure people have a lot of access to those, but I do have a slide that has the full articles of all of where all that data was pulled from. So I will get that shared over with you.
Yeah, because I actually wrote some of it down. I'm like, oh, I need to put that. I have some of my talks. I'm like, I need that information in this talk. So I appreciate that. All right, wonderful.
Well, I mean, again, Vet Partners Utilization Guide, I will also plug here as well. Like the Vet Partners Vet Team Utilization Guide is a great thing, especially because it's based on the whole team and everything we talked about here was full team utilization. So it's a great read.
And it's a good resource too. If everybody just goes online to, I can send them the link or you can find it. It's under Vet Partners Team Utilization Guide. It really has protocols and procedures and SOPs for everything you ever wanted to do in your hospital. No joke. So just go on there, register to get it. It's free. There's no marketing ploy. There's nothing you have to do other than sign into it. And then you can create your own stuff from the resources they've already done it for you. And you can make it your own. So it's an amazing resource, honestly. So yes, thank you for sharing that. So. All right, I'm going to stop the recording. Oh, before I do that, sorry, I should probably end it with thank you so much everyone for coming today. I appreciate all of your time and please follow my YouTube channel at South Coast Veterinary Manage if you're not already following it. I will continue to send you emails. I appreciate everyone for today. I'm going to stop the recording, but I want those of you online to answer my question really quick. Thank you. Okay.